Tales of Estolia by Sashina Kerfman. Volume 1. The Promise of Zacharias. Part 7. Catalyst of Change. Chapter 5. Bendelora.
Amador, the second son of Zacharias, is often overlooked when the history of Estolia is under discussion. Among his many significant accomplishments is the design of our three most critical historical buildings: the palace on Mount Zacharias, the cathedral next to Mount Estoliana, and the temple within it. Antonio Cordero Zacarion, Capitulo 85.
The two men argued and dithered with Sloane Danvers, but Zeb's thoughts were on the substance of his Bendelora, the blessing most Estolians received when they turned 18.
Estolia is of little interest to the rest of the world. This is one of the promises of deity. Despite the lack of covetous eyes being cast in her direction, she is threatened by the actions of other nations that court planet-wide disaster. As such, it is time for Estolia to exercise influence over the nations of the world. The burden of this requirement is more than any one descendant of Zacharias should be made to face. And yet, it is placed upon your shoulders, Sebastiani Alexandros Zakarian, to meet this extraordinary need. The blessings that will come to you will be more than you can imagine, even as you will feel like the sacrifices you are asked to make are more than you should be forced to endure. Your influence in the greater world will come at a great price, and that is to forego Estolia as your home for much of your life. You will also be given to marry a bride for whom there will be no aura, no advance sanction by the church. You will marry a woman in your 30th year who you have never met, never touched prior to the hour of your wedding. The secular inducement, when the rewards are counted in terms of the good of the planet and thus the good of Estolia, will be impossible to reject. Your willingness to meet the needs of the planet, and by extension Estolia, will result in rewards that cannot be numbered. But if you have the faith to meet and accept your destiny, you will ultimately be filled with the sure sense of right. Peace in all your decisions will be one of the greatest blessings bestowed upon you, a peace that will provide you further guidance.
He held the woman in his arms who would take away the greatest joy any Estolian was given to know in this world. But the sense of sureness when he received the phone call had been immediate. Marrying this woman was a part of his destiny. Denying Sloane Danvers and the Parity Collective made the reasons obvious. He left Estolia after his acolyte year, returning only for his brother's weddings. He would have to see if he would be allowed to use the seclusion suite in the temple, or if he would be denied. The arguments dried up, and Quinton was sharing additional information. When Zeb heard her preference of the Galaxy Group, he hugged her slightly closer. Whatever the reality behind her appearance in his life, it reassured him to know she would go with Galaxy over Parity. Once the objections, as well as the motive for murder, were behind them, Sloane and Brandt left, and they were able to get on with the wedding. In almost no time, it seemed, he was married to a woman whom he had never met, never spoken with. Caris couldn't believe the threat of Sloane Danvers was finally removed from her life. She relaxed in the spacious living room, seated next to her new husband. The older gentleman discussed nuances in the legal situation with Reardon. Melody somehow conjured up catered delicacies and was acting the perfect host. Shortly after the two older gentlemen made their excuses and left, her new husband said,
"I believe it might be in our best interests to absent ourselves, while the seismic impact of our marriage in the business world runs through its paces. In a week to 2 weeks, the dust will settle, and we will see our pathway forward."
"Where will we go?"
Estolia. One of the few places on the planet where we can be certain we are beyond the reach of Sloane Danvers and the Parity Collective. I have not seen my latest nephews or my niece, and I am anxious to visit with my family.
Reardon asked to speak with Zeb privately, and Caris was left alone once again with Melody.
Thank you, Melody. You saved my life today.
She still did not look like she believed it was a good thing.
Will you divorce right away?
Karis' troubled eyes met Melody's.
Was that the real understanding? That this whole thing was window dressing?
Karis looked away, swallowing on the emotions welling up, fighting back tears. Her voice was monotone as she continued.
If Zeb wishes his freedom, he knows what to do. I don't want to be free. I'll stay with Zeb as long as he can stand me.
She clasped her hands together to quell the trembling. Her knuckles were white and her breathing was shallow.
Are you really as genuine as you would like me to believe?
You should delay any character judgments about me until you get to know me, at least a little.
She heard the men leaving Reardon's study and rose to her feet. The way Reardon wrote the prenuptial agreement made divorce a disaster.
You will take care of our friend Beau?
Zeb was asking Reardon.
It's done already.
Reardon assured him. When Karis saw the serious looks on the faces of the two men, and the suspicious expression on Melody's face, she felt compelled to clarify, blurting out.
For the record, I don't ever want a divorce, but...
She broke off at the looks of surprise on their faces. Clearly divorce was not the subject of their conversation in the study.
But...
Zeb prompted her. She met his eyes and said,
If you want out, please let me be the one to request the divorce.
Her eyes flicked over to Reardon before returning to her new husband, and she clarified.
Reardon wrote the prenuptial contract so that it's best for me to be the one requesting it. Otherwise, I get control of the money back, and I don't want it.
Zeb's voice was gentle.
I do not intend to divorce you. I pledged my entire future to you, Chrysandra. I do not believe in divorce, and I will never ask it of you.
She blushed, feeling like a fool for bringing it up.
We'll see you back here in 90 days.
Reardon told Zeb.